you went and spoke with one of the civic groups at the prison recently on your campaign trail. Can you tell me like what you've learned about criminal justice reform or like sentencing reform, or what your goals would be around any of that as governor, and or like governors in charge of corrections? Like,
Yeah.
what would your goals be around corrections in the state?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I did, the question was about a visit I took to the Maine State Prison recently. And I met actually with a number of people, including the group of long termers, about 50 or 60 people who are in for 30 years or more. And I heard what they had to say, and they shared their views about the correction system. We're actually doing a lot of innovative things in our correction system in Maine. And that was one thing I was really interested in and learned a lot about. We've actually worked with some models coming out of the Nordic countries where I remember visiting the Supermax in Warren at the time, like 30 years ago, and it was a bit scary because I remember looking at people looking out the window, you know, and just in these really buttoned down tight. Well, that Supermax side, in part, has been transformed into I'm forgetting the name of it now.
ELU.
ELUs, thank you. And it's the ELU is a unit where people who have shown that they are responsible citizens and residents of the prison are chosen by the warden. There's about 35 cells there, I think, where they live very openly. They can roam around the prison during the day. They actually had family visits during the 4th of July last year and at Christmas time, and they picnics outside. And we're really doing a pretty good job with that regimen of getting people ready for eventual release, which is absolutely critical. And who took me there was Representative Nina Milliken, who I served in the legislature with, and she's a victim of violence herself. And her goal as a member of the Criminal Justice Committee is to make sure that for the people who are being imprisoned for these sometimes just horrendous crimes don't do it again, and that we have a correction system that works better at recidivism and at getting people ready to live normal lives. And in fact, you know, the reality is that of all those people in the long-term unit, I think close to 100% of them committed their crimes, and some of them are terrible, grievous crimes that you read about in the newspaper. These people were when they committed it were almost all 23 or younger at the time they did it. And so now these people are 40, 50, 60, going after degrees, you know, being in prison and doing that. So I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about some of the innovation that we're doing in Maine, and I think that we should continue it. I've also worked with some business people who have been actively involved in helping people transition from the prison system with release, temporary release for work duty and all that. And woman that owns the Nonantum Inn in Kennebunkport does this, and and that whole team has been really good about that. And there's a bunch of other businesses that do this, and I think that's really good. You know, I have to say, corrections wasn't something that was top of mind to me when I was running for governor, but it's something that we all have to think about because these are human beings, and victims need to be looked after. The whole criminal justice system hasn't been very well cared for, and our correction system needs attention too. So I appreciate the question.
Do you have a position on parole?
Parole, Maine is one of the few states, I think it's about 17 states now that don't have a parole system. We have something that looks like it but isn't quite parole. And I think that it's time to reconsider parole coming back to Maine.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?